Yes, role plays are effective, but I think it's more effective to listen to previous recordings that went well, went bad. I think a lot of times either first-time managers or others try and overcorrect, just like with those role play scenarios where they try and be too formal or they try and be too disconnected, like I'm the boss, you're the employee. And at the end of the day, like if you know that your employees' parents are sick or they have some life events going on, like I think that can help you to navigate that relationship better. I truly believe outside of a CRO, every sales leader should be responsible for one account.
Let's talk about some of the things that reps talk about when CROs and leaders are not in the room.
The first thoughts that come to mind are
Peter, my man, how's it going?
Mike, how are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Things are good. It's getting warm here in Montreal. Super pumped, having you on the show. Gonna make me look bad. And I told you before we hit record with the nice blue shirt and me with my typical, black t-shirt. But
no, you're good. Hey, that's what. Hey, CEOs get to wear a black t-shirt. If I'm CEO one day, I will also be in a t-shirt.
Oh, cool, man. All right. Before we, start a conversation about AE leadership dynamic and some of the bullshit that we have to deal with in some orgs, let's get to know you a little bit more. I think it's interesting just to, share a little bit about your background, how you ended up in sales and what you're working on these days.
Yeah. So quick background. I grew up in a log cabin about an hour east of Seattle. Both my parents owned small businesses in nurseries, like with like flowers, not babies. And so I was just always in the back room, always around. So I kind of got exposed to indirectly like selling, customer relationship, customer management, all of that. Went to college, kind of graduated in a bad time, basically around 2009, and landed a job with Target. Worked there a year. It was brutal. But through that, I then found a sales job at Tableau. And truly like went into this like community event back when it was like, 400 employees. There was only like 300 in Seattle. The CEO was speaking to a crowd of 40 people. It was nuts. And just kind of convinced them like, hey, I've done this customer relationship thing forever. I know how to talk to people. I know how to invest into that partnership. So I convinced them to basically give me an intro level sales role. In 6 years, I went from that role up to about second highest, which is about 5 jumps. Then went over to another Seattle company, Highspot, kind of started their strategic team. 2 years ago, went over to my first foreign-owned company, Krisp, which was an amazing experience, and kind of working at my first also foray into an AI-first company. And now I've landed here at PeopleReign, which is a 17-person, AI-only company. And yeah, now doing strategic sales here.
I love it. Man, I want to talk about early days. I think that has something to do with the fact that you stick around in sales for many years. So, what's some early experience that shaped how you approach, selling today, if you can recall?
The one that always comes to mind is just in the plant business, and especially back then before there was, Google reviews or all these online voices supporting or not supporting businesses. I mean, when you owned a small business, like you truly had to invest in relationships because word of mouth was a huge driver. Obviously, people being happy in the store and happy with the service you provide is a huge driver. And with plants, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I want these 10 trees. And then if they come back in 6 months and they're all dead, not only is that a bad customer experience, but plants are expensive. And so then to get 6 new trees or come up with some type of return policy that like favors a bad plant but doesn't favor a bad plant owner. It just you really have to make sure that you are looking for long-term solutions that your customer, your product to say, hey, just to make sure before you buy these 6 plants, do you have shade? Do you have sun? Do you have an automatic watering system, or are you going to be manually watering these, right? And like asking those questions, which again at the time wasn't necessarily sales because they already wanted the product, but it started to show to me like how to ask questions, how to dig deeper, like, the 5 levels of why, and just really understanding like, all right, we don't want to just sell trees to sell trees. We want to sell trees to people who want them, are going to make them happy, or are using them for a purpose, privacy or otherwise. and then make sure that they have the tools to be successful. Again, all pre being able to go to Google and be like, my tree has yellow leaves, what do I do? Or, an app where you can take a picture and it tells you instantly. You had to educate them a lot. And so from very early on, that's where kind of my, I would say foundation or like core of sales has been, is investing in relationships, investing in long-term solutions to make them successful. And if you focus on those pieces, your success, your numbers, your pay, all of that follows in positive ways, or at least that's been my experience. And so that's really where a lot of that was born out of.
I really love this because I think that mindset is the most important thing a salespeople, salesperson can actually develop, because techniques and tactics and all that stuff you can learn along the way. But the fact that you started early on, to your point, your mom and dad, they had a small business, and many other people might actually, sell the same thing. So you might say, okay, it's just, commodity, I'm buying flowers or buy plants. But the fact that, they took the time to educate the buyer, it makes, the buyer realize that if I want to do this again, I go to these people. I know, right now we have Google and we have, all sort of like ChatGPT, and we can quickly, get the education we need, but we still, skeptical whether the answer we're getting is really 100% correct or not. So if someone still act as a trusted advisor, that person will be the choice for sure, regardless of what you're selling.
Trusted advisor, exactly right. And that was 20 years before anyone used that term or used it in sales. I think you said that you recently had John Barrows on the show, who I love. He was an early day Tableau trainer. I had him multiple times. He's great. And one of the things that always stuck out with me in his stuff is he always said, I teach tips, not tricks. So exactly what you just said, like it's about how do you work with someone? How do you pull the wool over their eyes just to get to their checkbook? And that's always been what I've been focused on, and why I'm in sales, is to help people.
I love it. Look, today, oh, by the way, you're the first AE on the show. We both share, some sentiments, because I've been in sales for long enough to see the bullshit that comes, from onboarding to offboarding. And I want to talk about those things because we have CROs, VPs, enablement leaders watching or listening to this. I want them to hear from an end user perspective what a good or bad practice might look like. So if they need to do some adjustments, they hear it from someone who's actually been in the trenches. And right now, again, you grow in your career from selling smaller things right now to more strategic accounts. So let's start with onboarding. You just get hired to the company.
Yeah.
And it could be any example. If you don't want to share again names, totally fine. What did you really, need in your first, let's say, 30 to 60 days that you didn't get?
Yeah, the last 3 companies I've been at have been very unstructured onboarding, mainly because they were just small companies, right? 100, 140, 15. And so in those, it was kind of people had come up with very loose or recommendations around onboarding, but it was a lot of self-starter, self-driven. And when there's gaps or holes, like the expectation is you try to understand where that answer or where that data may lie, go seek it, not like, cross your arms, sit in the corner and pout. Tableau was a little bit different. That was about, like I said, 400 and 450 employees when I joined. And they had a very strict onboarding process, but it was 2 weeks. You were with every other position at the company when you joined. So my onboarding class was I think 22 people at the time. Was everyone from managers to engineering to customer support. And it was basically for 2 weeks, you were all in the room for 4 to 8 hours for the day. And then there would be the first Wednesday, everyone would be in the room for the first 4 hours. And then there would be breakouts in the afternoon around sales or product or other things. So what I needed early on, and I'll kind of split this into 2 things, right? There's what do you need early on is I'm brand new to sales. I'm right out of college. I'm a promoted SDR, or you saw promise in me and I've never done sales before, but I've done other things in my career. And this is a first time sales role versus coming in as strategic, right?
Yeah.
So as a first time one, I mean, I think it has to all be about just product knowledge and selling skills, right? And it's kind of and I'm going through this right now with my kids, every morning and night, we have them brush their teeth. Sometimes they want to do it. Sometimes we do it. And when they do it, they kind of just like jam it all around. They barely touch their teeth with the brushes. And then they're like, I'm done. And I think it's like, even in that instance, just teaching them the like, these are just the things you do every day, right? You go into your CRM, you look for cleanliness. You look at the list of who you're going to call for the day from whatever app provides that, or you build it, and you run down that list and you do those things, right? It's like teaching hygiene, teaching attention to detail, all of those things. Like, I think those are the skills you focus on with beginning ones. And then with your more strategic reps, it's a way bigger focus on like process and product, right? Because they need to be able to come in and say, all right, what am I selling and how do I sell it? And then internally, who am I working with to support each other in that eventual goal of selling more software? Mm-hmm. And so I think, again, it's like the beginning, it's 50% product, 50% skills, or maybe even like 60, 70 skills, 30% product. But then on the strategic side, it's much more, all product, all internal process. So they can come in because they know how to call someone. They know how to have a conversation, or at least at a strategic level, probably with a C level. They know how to use a CRM, drive those activities, and then kind of go from there. So that's how I would divide kind of what you're looking at there. As far as like, you actually get most of the time, because I have a lot of AEs that join companies. And I think a lot of times it's, you think that this package that you've built is this perfect baby. No one can ever call it ugly. It's self-driven. And once you've created it, you're like, all right, like this is it. I've created perfection. Why ever look at it again? And so I think there's the need to obviously iterate. So at least biannually, if not quarterly, like review that onboarding, make sure competitive switches or acquisitions are updated in it, right? Like all the things that sound like duh on the surface, but I think a lot of times these programs are built and it's kind of like, all right, we need to focus elsewhere until something breaks because we're growing. And then they get revisited like 4 or 5 years later and someone comes in and is like, what is this? Mm-hmm. Like, this is awful. So I think that's one element of it, is just always making sure, again, quarterly, biannually, that you just read through it all again. You have a quick hour session to review the materials, review the structure, make sure it's updated, and then make the small changes that you need to. I think the other thing is making sure that your program has appropriate check-ins. So whether that's like every 3 days, the manager schedules 30 minutes to say, what questions do you have? What's confusing? What doesn't make sense? Or what's working, right? And driving it that way. Because a lot of times it's, all right, we just hired the seller. Now sales enablement or HR, whoever owns onboarding, let us know when they're done with their program, right? Kind of like boarding school. When the kid turns 18, tell me, and then I'll take over from here. Like, but there needs to be more insight into there, because a lot of times you'll get in and you won't understand things. And so, 3 weeks later, when you come out of boot camp, you'll forgotten half of your questions. So it takes you longer to ramp, right? All these things. And I would assume most CROs and VPs, the purpose of onboarding is to get someone trained as soon as possible so they can get in role as soon as possible, off ramp as soon as possible, and obviously closing deals as soon as possible. So I think there needs to be a little bit more accountability and ownership of driving that, and not just like pitching them over the fence until they come out of this thing and graduate, and really making sure you do the check-ins and help drive that along. Because a lot of friends I talked to have felt lonely in that process, have felt like they don't know what resources to reach out to, or the managers are supposed to check in and it's kind of a, hey, if you need anything, ping me. But they're busy with their own stuff. So it needs to be structured in terms of the check-ins, and it needs to be something that can be reviewed, right? Because at a CRO level, you're not going to go into every report and see if, Michael's managing Peter properly. But if you had a dashboard that just said, hey, you hired 10 people, every manager is supposed to do 5 check-ins with them, and you're only showing 35 check-ins on this dashboard, like, now you know whether to drill in. I always joked back at Tableau when we were selling to C-levels, like, they want to know if their day is going to go 3 ways, right? Like, normal, I don't have to do anything, or it's going awful, I close the door and put a shotgun on the table, right? If anyone comes to try and talk to me. And so, like, how do you give them that quick info? How do you give them the numbers or the high-level statistics to be able to say, Is this a normal day? Everything's going smoothly, or do I need to make adjustments? So I think that's been missing what I've seen from onboarding in the past.
I really love the breakdown. You talk about quite a few things, and I wanted to go back to different aspects of what you just
Yeah,
shared. First thing first, you need to know your sellers. Okay, are they junior? Do they have any experience selling, actually, to your point? So don't give one size fit all, onboarding and training to everyone. You talk about like having this dynamic about foundations, like sales skills and product. So maybe for someone more, tenured, seasoned, you need more, product knowledge. You need more directions or guidance around who to reach out to when you're selling to certain buyer personas. For myself, like personally, when I joined companies in the past, I think one of the mistakes companies make is that we focus too much on the product side too early, for people have no idea how to sell to certain buyer personas. So you talk about
sure.
as an executive, how do we even deal with those people? I'm a 20
Yeah,
something year old kid, just got this job. I have to sell to someone in their 50s and 60s. They have vast knowledge. How can we get people ready to have these conversations? To your
totally.
point, we are really hands off as sales leaders or managers. Like, hey, when your onboarding is done, we can get started. So it means that onboarding period, not only it's lonely, to your point, it lacks practice. It lacks real life practice. So you just gain all this knowledge, you get bombarded by materials and content. Then you have to make sure that you remember it while doing something that you don't even know how to do. So I wanted to
Yeah.
hear from your experience. Have you guys did any sort of like practice sessions, something that could get you really ready for real life during onboarding?
Yeah, I mean there was role plays, there was and to your point about like the whole like peanut butter spread one size fits all, like
Mm,
oh my god, is that such a problem not only in onboarding but even ongoing trainings. Like
yeah,
almost every company I've ever been at, it's been this like, oh, we're going to train on this thing. And half of it is like basic selling skills that all the
mm,
strategic reps in the room are like, what am I doing here? Why am I
mm,
spending an hour on something I've been doing for 10, 15, 20 years? And I always gave this feedback at all the companies I've been at is like, if you're going to have a training on this thing, split it out. I
mm,
know it's maybe 2 hours on your training team versus one, but like the effectiveness and like their investment in the company is going to be so much higher afterwards,
mm,
and they're not going to check out. A lot of times when you have this onboarding and it's not tailored at least to tenure, which is I think a pretty basic thing to tailor it to,
yeah,
like you get people that check out, you get people that just like breeze through it and check the box. And we're all in sales, so someone in training reaching out being like, oh, did you do this thing? We're going to sell them that we did it, even if we didn't, because we don't want to do it. You truly do have to tailor it. And then as far as the role plays, I think this is one area where AI will make leaps and bounds in that, because traditionally with role plays, it's just so out of touch with real world scenarios and it's so doctored that I never have really felt that they're that effective. I think bringing call recordings in almost like an MBA class, like looking
mm,
at a case study of like, hey, this is a call recording. Everyone listens to it for 15 minutes. You write up your own notes. What did they do well? What did they do wrong for 15 minutes? Then you compare and then you break down what like the company views as right, wrong, and everything else. I think things like that are really helpful. But when you're like, all right, Michael, like it's day 3, like you got your scenario. I'm a VP of HR, like, and you just got me on the call.
Sell it to
Bring,
me.
bring. Hello, Michael. And like, and it's either like a trainer who is way too excited to do these role plays. And again, it's like all pre-formed answers of the questions you ask.
Mm,
Either it goes super easy where it's like, oh, like how is my day, let me tell you about it, plus 10 company objectives with data points that no one has said ever on a first call, right? Like, so there's little things like that. So yes, role plays are effective, but I think it's more effective to listen to previous recordings that went well, went bad, as well as every stage of the funnel, right? A disco call to a closing call to a negotiation call, whatever it is. They need to review all those points so they hear like, what is it going to be like? What does a door slamming in a face look like at this company? Because at some
mm,
companies, it's very soft. And at other companies, like you're going to the ER afterwards because you have a broken nose. Like, and I think preparing that person for what that's going to be like and giving them that insight rather than like, oh, let's try and get like smarter than our sellers and like think of this perfect scenario with all these preformed answers and questions. Like, again, I think AI will help with that because you can load a bunch of videos into it and say, all right, this is your role based on all of this data. Michael's going to be the seller and you interact with them. And now that we have voice interactions with AIs, I think that will make it easier to do role plays. But I do really think the call recordings, the review is more effective in my experience.
I'm with you. Like, funny enough, you're mentioning this. I mean, Sell Me the Spend, the core product is a role play. It's an AI role play where you can practice. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to have this functionality was the fact that role play really sucked. Like, at least in my experience. First and foremost, you have different ways of doing it, and I tried all of that. You got group setting, which to me is soul crushing, and then you got the trainer going extremely harsh on you, and I'm like, holy crap, it doesn't sound like my real calls, so this is not relevant to me. You are ruining the morale, so everybody's scared, like, am I next? Can I leave? Or it's too simple because you as an even trainer, you've never been a CRO yourself. You've never been a CTO. You've never been that bar persona. So you don't even understand their world. So the way you act is really poor. So it doesn't add any value. It's just a waste of time for everyone. And the bigger problem is when the role play is done, you typically don't get that feedback. How should I improve it? Because the time is limited and you have a lot of people in the room. So it's almost impossible to really just navigate how to, do things better next time. Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai. Anyways, let's go back to onboarding. Let's talk about manager and rep relationship. So let's talk about one-on-ones. What separates a checkbox one-on-one from a meaningful one, if you will?
I think the great ones structure one-on-ones into professional and personal, because I've had one-on-ones where like you cover deals, so it's basically a forecast meeting, plus you cover what your work on, plus you cover what their feedback is, and then if you have any time at the end, it's your feedback. So I think you have to decide, like, if you don't have the tools to give you that data and you're going to jump on with your reps every week to have them talk about the top 5 deals or whatever it is, that to me is more of a forecast or a pipeline review, not a one-on-one. Or if you're going to do it in a one-on-one, it's going to have to be a 60 or 90 minute one-on-one. You're going to have a very strict agenda, like first 45 minutes pipeline, next 30 minutes, like what you're working on, where you need my help, blah, blah, blah. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I think a lot of times leaders don't have the more personal check-in. I've gotten that recently and it's great. It's just, how are you doing in general? Like, taking off my manager hat for a second, and, depending on what kind of a manager you are, either putting on a coworker or a friend hat, like, how are you? How is life? How's outside of life? I think a lot of times either first-time managers or others, try and overcorrect, just like with those role play scenarios where they try and be too formal or they try and be too disconnected. Like, I'm the boss, you're the employee. And at the end of the day, like, if you know that your employees' parents are sick or they have some life events going on, like, I think that can help you to navigate that relationship better. It's just like with my customers, I always make sure, if I'm in an active sales cycle, that I put just even once a month a reminder or a note to myself to reach out to them, not talking about anything that I'm selling or working on. How was your trip to Hawaii? your son's soccer game's coming up, right? Just something that's completely removed, because at the end of the day, we're all people. You need that human to human interaction. And as a manager, like, or when I go into leadership, like, that's something I'm going to be invested in, like, outside of just, what are you doing for me today? Yesterday doesn't exist anymore. Here's 10 more things for you to do. So I think that's a key component to one-on-ones that I've seen over the years, kind of separate the great from the okays. When it comes to feedback, one, I think you need to take the first step with your ICs to let them know how you give feedback, how you would like to receive feedback, and it needs to be in a constructive way. Like, anytime I'm giving feedback, up or down, I always say, if I'm not giving you feedback that's constructive and actionable, I'm not doing it right. And please call me out on that, because I want you to come out of these meetings feeling comfortable and confident in what expectations are and what that feedback was, not that I just punched you in the gut for 30 minutes and didn't tell you what could change so that I don't punch you in the gut a week from now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of ICs are scared to give that upward feedback. Retaliatory, there's layoffs left and right these days. So, like, saying like, hey, I like to shoot me straight, or I like a little bit of fluff, or whatever it is, like, do some internal analysis, understanding yourself how you like to receive feedback. Pick some metricable or consistent things in the way that you give feedback and set that expectation so they can call you out or keep you in line with those. And I'm not saying that they have to be carved into stone, but at least a baseline. And then if over time you realize there needs to be a change, make a change and communicate that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that is a missing piece of a lot of one-on-ones that I've actually never seen a leader do outside of like a C level if I'm directly reporting to them. But like managers, directors, VPs, it's never been like, hey, by the way, like, this is how I give feedback. This is how I like to receive it. It's always just, let's jump in. And then again, expectations are misaligned. People don't feel like they can speak up, blah, blah, blah. So I think those elements are missing from a one-on-one. And then I think another huge miss, and I know Corporate Bro has done jokes about this. I mean, my God, the amount of times and leaders I have had that expect you to come to meetings with the cure for cancer and the bibliography of all your references of how you got there, and expect and load up all this stuff on you that you have to fill out medics and med picks and all these things. And then they join the meeting. They're like, so Michael, like, what's going on with Cisco? Where's that deal at? And it's like, are you out of your mind? I spend 8 hours a week putting that data into Salesforce. Why? What? Like, it's just, I think that, like, come with questions. And you know, I know I've given that feedback to leaders. They're like, well, you don't know what we have upward meetings, we have downward meetings, we have all these things. It's like, okay, that's the job. You don't like it, don't have it, don't be it. Like, you can't go into those jobs and just dump everything down and then jump on these calls after you've asked them to put it all in the CRM, and then you don't look at the CRM data. Anyone who's not in sales listening to this will be like, that's wild. Even in this day and age of AI with like things like Gong at companies that I've had it, managers would jump on and be like, so where's this deal at? And it's like, oh my God.
Go check it out. Don't be lazy.
Oh God, it drives me. That's the Men in Black light. It's the Men in Black light. You get promoted, you forget all of it, and then you read that 1992 sales manual, and it's just like, oh my God.
Look, now I can see the emotion. It's frustrating. I've been in those meetings too. Look, let's just send a message to CROs or VPs or whoever is listening to this. How can they actually, you know, keep their managers accountable about this? Because I'm sure top talent won't stay if this continues over and over again. We both left companies for, you know, similar reasons, you know, bad bosses. So how should they hold mid-level managers, you know, accountable for how they actually run decisions?
Yeah, I don't think it's, I don't want to say it's not rocket science or anything else, but it's like, just come up with some basic guidelines. And here's another nebulous thing, PIPs. At every company, PIPs are so different, formal, informal. Every seller knows that a PIP is a graveyard where a seller goes to die, but leadership always says, oh no, a PIP is supposed to get you back on track and it's supposed to help you. No, it's not. You're trying to fire me, and that's the way that you do it. So like,
clean.
Yeah, but it's never like, there's never expectations set to the ICs. There may be, and maybe every CRO does this and it just gets lost through all the filters down to an IC level, but like, there's never any at an IC level like, hey, this is how they should be structured. This is what you should expect from those. It's different manager to manager, team to team, and sometimes even, because a lot of managers have favorites, IC to IC. So it's like, just come up with guidelines and a structure that if a manager isn't doing that, an IC can hold them accountable. And if you notice that a manager is not doing that, you can hold them accountable because you set that expectation on day one. So it's, have a direction as a CRO of how you want your teams to be run. And I'm not saying there's a good or bad answer there, right? There are some industries and there are some companies where it's like sales is a meat grinder, and we are going to grind out 95% of the people to find those 5%, right? It's a diamond crushing machine. And that may be your thing, but like lay that out and have that structure in place so that it's understood at all levels. Because I think the whole like, oh, I don't want to micromanage. I don't think it's micromanaging, right? Like on a road, I'm not being micromanaged by the government other than setting what a speed limit looks like. I can go 90 and a 60. Like, you're not going down and putting a governor in my car. You're just telling me, like, here are the lines. You know what I mean? Like, you set general guidelines. It's not micromanaging. And if you just say, like, these are how they should go, these should be the like goals of each of them. Again, whether it's forecast focused, professional career focused, personal focused, like all of that. And so I think it's just setting that tone from the top down. With any leadership position at that level, I think you should always carve out time every month, quarter, whatever frequency you feel is best, to go in and verify and validate, right? Like once a quarter, you can listen to a manager's one-on-one for 30 minutes and see how it went. Did the rep feel comfortable? Was it contentious? Did you feel like the manager cared or was investing, or they just show up to show up, right? Like, I feel like so many times it's this like, well, I'm so high level, I'm so out of the weeds, like I'm only looking at Mars, I'm not looking down to see if the earth is burning, that like there just has to be some time that you set aside to like dig into that data. Because so many times I've been a part of organizations where like feedback is given upwards and things aren't going well, and the person's like, I had no idea this was going on. It's like, how could you not, like, it's what is it, the phrase like, you see your nose despite your face or whatever it is, like you're so looking in the distance you don't see that like the ground beneath you's on fire. And so it's just, I think that's something that you just need to do, is like verify and validate at whatever frequency you feel is fair to go in. And that could be listening to calls. That could be having one-on-ones where it's like, hey, the purpose of this one-on-one is not for you to impress me because you're an IC or talk about your biggest deal. This purpose of this one-on-one is to say, like, how is the company going? There's no retribution. We're not going to record it. I'm going to take this as anonymous feedback. Are you happy? Are teams doing well? Are other people happy, right? Like, I think that's, depending on the company and the size, like lost a lot. And one thing before we move on to the next one, which I feel like when I get into leadership, this is something that I will do from day one until either I realize that no one does it for a reason or it fails. But like, I truly believe outside of a CRO, and depending on how big the company is, maybe a VP, every sales leader should be responsible for one account at the very least. I'm not saying it needs to be the most strategic account. Like a VP of a strategic team should own like an SMB account, just so that they see, what do people say when they reach out, just so that they see how much they are putting on their ICs to fill out a medic in the CRM. And then ICs should see a leadership forecasting call where they go through and review the data and talk, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not one account that's very low risk, whether they close them or not. Like, I'm not saying give them a quota, but like make them go through what the trenches look like so they have an understanding of what happens in the field. Because again, it's very much this like ivory tower concept of like, they're up there looking up and they don't understand what's happening out there. And there's always a big disconnect that causes friction, causes you to be reactive to things, causes you to fall behind. And you can just get so much data even just from owning an SMB or two account.
I love this idea. And I only seen this in one company I worked at, that the VP actually owned a couple of accounts just to understand like what's going on in our lives. And if you if you look at the tenure of CROs these days is what, less than 2 years most of the time, and then you can point finger at, look, hey, the board is not fair, or the company was not ready for things. But in reality, when you don't get your hands dirty, you don't even understand the real problems, and you
Totally.
start spending your budget on things that don't even move the needle. How many sales methodologies we roll out for millions of dollars that nobody adopts to? We
Yeah.
promote, to your point, reps that shouldn't even be a manager, and then we give them no coaching to know how to coach, and then we are expecting magic happen. I love that idea, like, by the way, like, yeah, just own one account just to understand what's going on in the
Totally.
front line.
Yeah.
So when you get to more strategic selling, obviously
Yeah.
it's a team sport. You need to work with other departments and teams internally. Where do you feel the most friction or lack of support when it comes to actually moving the deal forward? Is it marketing? Is it product? Is it legal? Is it enablement?
I think when people come in, and maybe this actually goes back to your onboarding thing,
Mm.
one thing that would be really helpful for sellers and just really helpful for companies in general is like define the departments, define where sales ends and marketing begins. Because a lot of times those blurred lines cause friction, cause deals to be extended, cause things to fall through the cracks. Because it's not, and sometimes companies are like, oh, that's not me, that's not my problem, versus like, oh, let's work together to solve this. So I think it's clearly defined what those roles are. And then also, especially for sales and depending on like where sellers have been, clearly define like what the ways that those teams interact. And at a very basic level, it's either are they peers or is someone higher? Some companies are like, look, anyone who's not in sales works for sales. So if sales comes to you saying they need something, that is your priority and you work on it. Versus like, hey, they're not your boss. You guys are peers. You're collaborating. So when they say they need something, like, let's collaborate on it. So I think it's setting those expectations, clearly defining it. And I think especially on the where sales ends and marketing begins, like not only clearly define actual examples and use cases, right? Like I need a one pager created because a customer asked me for X and we don't have it. Clearly define like the process to ask for that. Clearly define the SLAs around it. A lot of times internal processes don't have SLAs where it's like, oh, submit this form for a new piece of content. Great. Now it goes into this nebulous place that I've never seen it again. I don't know how to track it versus like, hey, submit this form. And if you don't hear back in 48 hours, this is the person to ping or this is how to escalate, right? So that way people know like when I need help, when I need to move something forward, these are the ways that I do it. Because I think a lot of times coming in, it's, oh, I assume what marketing's role is. Oh, I assume this. And I feel like even in sales, titles are so wildly different between companies. Like an account manager at one company is just renewals versus an account manager at another is upsell and cross sell, right? Like, so just define those things when people come in and have some type of a cheat sheet, a knowledge graph, however you want to communicate it. Just have something easily understandable to come in and say, okay, this is what my job is and how it's defined. This is what their job is and how it's defined. Here are some examples of like when I need something or things that I may need, how I go about it, who it is, what the process looks like. And then just, I think that would remove a lot of friction. I think also, I over the last 14 years, only one company has tried to do this, and it, to be honest, was an epic fail, but it's giving sellers the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times we go out in the field, as you've experienced as well, we get absolutely shredded, but we get something at the line or over the line to close. We come internally and it's just assumed, oh my God, a 15% discount? Like, why would you give that on call one? And it's like, I've been on 9 months of calls, and the fact that we didn't have to give them 40% is a crazy win that you're not giving me credit for, right? And that's a very surface level example, but like assume good intent, assume that they asked the question, they asked if they could use our legal paperwork rather than theirs, than just always assuming like, well, why is it on their paper? It's always should be on our paper, right? It's that kind of stuff just slow. Yeah, it's like, again, like I'm dragging myself into the medic tech bleeding out, and you just like slap me across the face because I got blood on your carpet. We as sellers need that safe place to land. And I'm not saying like don't verify and validate, just like I brought up earlier, right? Like ask your discovery questions like, hey, I saw a 15% discount. Just help me understand, like, how did we get there? What path did you take? Don't just assume that that's what they did on call one, or they gave it away because it was easy, or blah, 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 right? Like actually do some discovery, just like we do in our position, and assume good intent. I think a lot of times, as soon as you sell a deal, a seller's like, God, now I got to sell this internally. And I just went through one gauntlet and now I need to be through another, right? It's like finishing an Ironman competition. Someone high fives you at the end. It's like, great, the second Ironman starting right now. And you're like, I used all my energy just to get here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think it's just how you got to create that safe place internally where a seller can take a breath, feel like they're not going to get kicked in the ribs again when they're trying to just like stand up and not be dizzy. And how do you support that? How do you again have programs, guidelines, rails around it from multiple positions? Because a lot of times maybe your sales manager is a safe place, but when you start to involve legal, finance, account management, whatever, renewals, customer success, that's when they assume this malintent, or oh, sales is always trying to shove software down people's throats, or they're always selling shit that we don't have yet on a roadmap, and they make it our problem to deploy it. Like, again, some sellers are like that. Some sellers are not in it to help people. Some sellers are in it for the money. And when you're in it for the money, you do unnatural things to get to that point. But I think it's how do you verify and validate that they took the right things, that they followed the steps that you recommended. And if they're at this place, they're at that place for a reason, right? Again, whether that reason is malicious or not. But I think there's a lot of times where around cross-functional and collaboration, like that's really missed. And it's always assumed that we're a used car salesman who just painted over the rust and is trying to just get a car out the door.
Look, you said it. Don't assume. And again, we're talking about salespeople turning leaders, right? So you've been in the seat, you've sold before, and hopefully you've been someone who did it not because, as you said, they wanted to shove something through people's throat, but you did the job. So you walked through all these difficulties yourself. So drop assumption. I think that's just a basic thing you can do just to get started. Drop assumption, walk through the discovery. That's why you have one-on-ones. That's why you have all the tools that you can get reality check. Let's talk about some of the things that reps talk about when CROs and leaders are not in the room. It might actually bother the audience a little bit, but I want to hear from you. I have quite a few to share too.
The first thoughts that come to mind around, I think a big thing that are misses for CROs and VPs, it's whether or not you think sellers are just numbers or they're actual people. Because if you think they're just numbers, then a lot of times the programs, the decisions, all of it is just, this is what we're doing, deal with it, or there's the door. And so I think CROs and VPs listening or about to be promoted to those positions or wanting to learn, it's about like, tell them why. Because a lot of times it feels like those positions like saw an article on LinkedIn is like, oh my God, this is better than sliced bread. And they go all in without thinking on it or collecting feedback from the field of like, what ripple effects is this decision going to have? And they're just like, let's do it. So that's one thing, is just, coming with data. Hey, we're making this change because we saw X in the data. Here's the actual report. Because a lot of times it's we're not going to, we're doing a compensation change. And don't worry, we went out and interviewed 5 companies and this is how they do it. So this is why we're doing it. Oh, what are the companies? Oh, you don't need to worry about that. We went out and interviewed them. Like, okay, so you didn't. You just want to do this and you want to trick us into thinking, again, tricks, not tips, that it's what you did, right? So there's that element of it of just like, explain your reasoning. Like at the end of the day, be a human. Tell us why you're doing these things. People still may pick the door and leave, but it's better than just trying to shove it down our throats and being like, I'm the general, you're the soldier, do what I say or get out kind of a way. So I think there's that. I think also a big miss is like, set a timeline and stick to it. Such a running joke in sales is okay, so this quarter we're doing medic and we're going to do it. And every single leader over the next 3 weeks is going to make sure at 5 opportunities minimum a week that you're filling it out and all these things. And then in 2 months, no one acts like they've ever heard of medic before. We're never doing it again. And now all your sellers just spent 80 hours working on that, and then nothing ever comes from it. It just dies silently into the background. No one ever talks about it again, and it hurts morale. So be like, look, we're going to do this for 6 months. These are the ways that we're going to verify and validate as we go along that it's working and that it's worth our time. If we find it's not, then yes, we could pivot earlier and turn this off so that way you're not wasting time. But we at least want to run this for 6 months because that's how much data we think we need to collect to do it. Right? So like, I think there's that miss. And then I think, again, it's going back to the leaders having an account to keep a pulse. A lot of times the vision, the direction, the ideas are just so out of touch and disconnected. Yeah. Right? Like I think making the rounds right now online is that like some like TED Talk or some interview where the guy was like, whoa, no one in the audience, like tariffs haven't affected you, right? Like no one, I mean, who in here really is affected by a tariff? And everyone's like, yeah, right here. And like, it's like this, like the rich, like don't understand how all this affects people. Like it's just the disconnect. It's this not understanding what your ICs are going through, or not caring, which, okay, fair, but at least be upfront about that. And like just being so removed from your company to an extent. So I would say that is a lot of like over the years what I've seen. And again, some sellers really take it to heart. Others are like, yeah. They always talk about it. We never do it again. So I'll do the things I need to do, but I won't actually care about it. And again, if you're going to spend all the time with McKinsey getting to that point and money and hours and all these things, like do it in a thoughtful way to drive change. Don't just do it because you saw a LinkedIn article or a book told you to, or some other industry was like, this works for us. Like actually
don't make us the guinea pig.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Look, last question. That was my journey. I was not always a high performing rep. I sucked at it. I worked my way and turned to a high performing rep. But at some point, when I knew what I was doing and I knew my value and I knew when was the time I had to leave. So I wanted to hear from your perspective, because the person who actually introduced us, our great friend Mike, he said, okay, you're going to talk to a high performing, seller. So I want to hear from your perspective. When was the last time that you knew that it's time to move on, even silently?
So with Tableau, I was, I joined in 2012, right before the IPO. I left in 2018. In that time, I moved to 4 different cities. So I went Seattle, Austin, DC, Chicago, Seattle. I was a part of 3 different offices or teams starting. I had 8 territories in those 6 years. I changed roles, 7 times. And when I got back to Seattle, I had that moment where I was like, it's time for me to go. And what had happened was kind of 2 main things. One is all of my internal champions kind of left at that point. And so I didn't feel like I had someone in my corner. And when I moved back to Seattle to be with my now wife, who had left Tableau and gone to Google, it didn't feel like I was supported in Seattle when I got back. And it didn't feel like the company cared about all these things I did for the company the 5 years previous. So that was kind of a turnoff, and just like okay, well, it's gotten too big, it's gotten too corporate, they just don't give a shit anymore. And then the second thing was, I at Tableau had gotten deeply ingrained with the product. So I was one of, I think, when I originally got it, 2 AEs who got gold certified, which only the highest level of technical support and SCs got at Tableau at the time. I did all my own demos. I did all my own analysis, like very deeply ingrained in the product. And what I noticed over time was I was getting lazy with my prep because I just knew that I could do it in a crunch versus taking time to do it. Yeah. And I recognized, going back to how we started this, that like that wasn't investing properly in customers for their success or the relationship. So an example was I had to fly down to Texas to do this on-site with this hospital. And like, it was a big onsite. There's 40 people involved. And I like built all the dashboards the night before. And I loosely did the agenda, fly by the seat of my pants. That's where I work well. So I knew my personality to do that. But I was like, you know what? This went well, but there were some big opportunities for it to not go well. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I never wanted it to get to a point where I was providing a bad experience for a customer because I was just getting bored only having sold 2 products for 6 years and not feeling challenged anymore. And so I would say for any seller doing that introspection, it's, come up with your stack rank of why you're in sales. Money, building relationships, getting to be promoted to a manager or getting to that strategic level, whatever it is, stack rank those and start to really, again, monthly, quarterly, however much you want, look at like, am I still being challenged here? Or am I happy in most of these things? So one example is when I went from Tableau to Highspot, one of the things that I didn't consider at the time was like just being challenged with larger organizations. That just wasn't on my radar. And so I started over at Highspot, was being connected with these really high level people at companies like Uber and TELUS and Cisco and Google. And so I was able to build a better customer book of people that I can call on. And I just didn't think of that as a benefit. But like, again, if you're not feeling challenged with logos, sizes, or even products, find one that will, and then maybe make that change. Because you can always boomerang back. And typically, statistically, you will actually get paid more if you leave and come back even into the same role. Yep. But like, really do that introspection of like, what matters to me? Am I still being challenged on it? Is it still fun to me? And am I still getting something out of it? If so, great, stick where you are. If not, can I get that within the company somewhere else? Or do I need to look externally to get that? Like, you should always be not resting on your laurels, because there's always phases of life where that needs to support your personal life where work isn't crazy. But like, if you're young, if you're trying to like grow, then like, yeah, like don't switch companies every 12 months, but like invest in something, know what the company does well, learn it, get really great at it, take a step back, see if you can be challenged in other ways. And if not, find that next challenge.
I love it. That was a great advice. And I think we finish it on a high note. So
yeah.
Peter, if someone wants to reach out to you, can they and how?
Oh my God. Yeah. My LinkedIn, I don't know if it's public, but it's pretty easy. It's just my full name, peter.james.schmitz after the LinkedIn URL. You can reach out to me there. I think my work number is listed on my page, right? In sales, just in case customers ever need to get in touch with me. You can also reach out to me. My current work email is peter@peoplereign.io. So yeah, any way that you need to get a hold of me or have any questions, like I think I'm always open to connecting with people.
I love it, man. Really enjoyed this. Again, hope you guys.
Oh yeah, same, Michael.
Yeah, appreciate it. Enjoyed this episode, and until next time. Bye for now.
Yeah, till next time. See you, man.